All right, guys, it's time to tackle this fraud, Joan of Arc. You know the propaganda. This woman was a great heroine, united France, and beat back the British. And when she succeeded, they burnt her at the stake for the audacity of being born a woman. The men of the patriarchy couldn't stand having a woman being in charge. Well, this documentary here, The Real Joan of Arc, where is it here, sheds light on that, on the bullshit of it. And so it's time for us to tackle this, okay? Now, this documentary also shows you that women were treated very well and they had rights. I'll show you what I mean. Now, I want to show you the past isn't any different from the present. What's happening in the present, right? Red carpets rolled out to give women easy, high status jobs. You'll see it's no different here.
Religious fervor and mysticism reign in this ravaged kingdom. The great Gothic cathedrals have just been completed. And long before Joan's birth, prophecies announced the coming of a pucelle, a young woman sent by God to save the kingdom of France.
L'époque, la fin du Moyen-Âge notamment, est une époque remplie de prophéties. Et même plus exactement.
It's a time of prophecies, but more precisely, prophetesses, right? Prophetesses is female. Why is that? Because being a prophet is a no struggle, easy, safe, risk-free job with status, and it was given to women.
De prophétesses, et qui étaient souvent difficiles.
Who are very difficult to interpret. Yeah, they just make up stories about the future, and that was their job. How is that any different from now, where the boardroom has to be 50% female, and women who aren't, any good at the job are giving it to them, or taking up positions in the boardroom? They're just given positions, right? There's no difference. Human nature hasn't changed whatsoever. Now, I'm going to show you that they also had rights.
I think news has already reached your ears of a young maid whom, as we piously believe, was sent to us from heaven. She arrived to light our mortal coil on the night of the Lord's Epiphany.
Jeanne, on ne sait pas quand est-ce qu'elle est née. En tout cas, ce n'est pas le 6 janvier 1412. Elle-même donne des dates différentes. Les chroniqueurs donnent des dates différentes.
But one little-known event in her life may shed more light. Joan was engaged to be married. Her parents tried to force her into a marriage. But having made a vow of chastity, she rejected the young man.
There you go. They tried to force her to marriage, and she just rejected. Two things going on here. One is she's probably a lesbian. She doesn't like men. That's what's going on here. And two, she was free to reject him. How come he didn't get together with the patriarchy and force this woman to do what he wanted?
Who then took her to court.
He took her to court? She's a woman. She has no rights.
In 1428, Joan appears and defends herself alone before the Officialité de Toul and wins.
So she's allowed to defend herself alone. She doesn't need a man to escort her. And they side with her. The patriarch sides with this woman. Wow. I thought women didn't have rights.
The only mention of this matrimonial trial is a plaque opposite the cathedral.
si elle se défend devant l'officialité seule, c'est-à-dire sans l'aide de ses parents, de son père, de sa mère, c'est que Jeanne a obligatoirement au moins 20 ans. C'était l'âge de la majorité pour l'officialité.
And this is important too. They're saying she's at least 20 years of age because she had to be that old to defend herself on her own. Why does she want to be considered younger? Because she wants to scam people. She wants to scam the king into the idea that she is this young virginal peasant girl that has gained all her abilities through divine intervention. And so this guy's basically saying, but if she's 20, 21 or so, she would have time to be trained to do what she does, right?
De tout à ce moment-là.
So Joan could have received years of training to learn the art of war. But from whom?
And she did, of course. I'll show you what I mean.
The Lorraine archives hold an astonishing document. The tenancy agreement signed by Joan's father, Jacques d'Arc. The agreement shows that Jacques not only rented farmland from the local lord, but also a fortress called the Château de Lille.
This is to show you that her parents, even though they weren't noblemen, were wealthy with connections. She wasn't some impoverished peasant girl gifted by God.
So is Jacques merely a lowly farmer?
Alors, ce n'est pas, je suis désolée, une famille très pauvre. C'est une famille aisée du village. Son père est doyen, un peu l'équivalent
So he had money. He was a dean, which was equivalent to mayor. So he had position.
de maire. Il est en contact avec le capitaine
And he knows the captain. So he has connections. Right.
de vos couleurs qu'elle ira trouver plus tard, si celui-ci la reconnaît, si elle le reconnaît, si qu'ils se connaissent tout simplement. Ce n'est pas une famille du bas de l'échelle, c'est plutôt une des familles les plus riches du village.
If Jacques d'Arc manages a fortress in this threatened region, it must be under the authority of the leader of the king's army, Captain de Baudricourt. His officers oversee the transformation of Joan into a man.
There you go. Joan is just some lucky girl that was picked. Some brilliant man realized that the English were making big headways in France because of the disunity. There were too many men wanting to rule in France. And so they could never get unified and put up a really good fight against the English. So some guy who cared about the country said, I got this plan. We'll find this virgin goddess that's assigned by the god himself that everybody will follow. That's what he did. That's why they transformed Joan into this, goddess figure. And it worked. Joan was not a part, that is, she was not the originator of this. She was not chosen by God. She was not altruistic. She did not really work for a living, not really. This was the design of a man who cared about his country. She was leeching off a man as usual. The king of France was in dire straits. That was the groundwork of this. This is the groundwork of the scams. You're in desperate shape now.
Alors, en ce début du XVe siècle, le royaume de France est dans une situation catastrophique. Le roi a été obligé de quitter Paris. Il s'est réfugié à Bourges, on l'appelle par dérision le petit roi.
He was derided as the little king of Bourges, if I'm getting the French name right. So you see, he was in trouble. He was getting defeated by the English. And he was kicked out of of Paris.
Roi de Bourges. Et quand les Anglais ont mis le siège devant Orléans, il s'est réfugié ici, dans cette forteresse de Chinon. La situation est tellement désespérée que futur Charles VII, envisage de quitter le royaume.
Dang, so he was in such bad shape. He was hiding in this castle and thinking, I might have to run to Spain as a refugee. That's tough shape. So you see, he was ripe for a scam, right? So Joan makes her presentation.
Nous sommes ici dans la salle d'apparat du château de Chinon, qui se situait au premier étage, où Jeanne est rentrée. Elle traverse cette pièce où il y a environ 300 chevaliers, une cinquantaine de torches et de flambeaux, sans compter, dit Jeanne, les lumières spirituelles. Jeanne, une jeune fille qui a environ 20 ans, qui est brune, petite, bien compassée de membres, nous dit Jean Bréal. Elle a un cou bref, elle mesure 1,59 m. Elle est habillée d'un pourpoint noir et d'une...
First, there's 3 steps to this scam. The first is a great entrance, right? She's a woman showing up like a man, like a knight.
Une tunique de gros gris noir. Elle dénote au milieu de ses chevaliers, de ces belles dames. Et pourtant, elle n'est pas impressionnée. Elle fait les révérences accoutumées à faire au roi, nous dit Jean Chartier, le chroniqueur, comme si elle eût été nourrie à la cour.
As if she'd been raised in court. Well, she was. She was trained her whole life for this scam.
Jeanne s'approche, va vers le trône qui était près de la cheminée, et en réalité, le roi a quitté.
They're testing it, right? The king had left the throne, was hidden amongst the courtiers, right? They wanted to see if she knew who he was. Of course, since she was trained, she would have known what he looked like. She would have been told.
Le trône, il s'est caché parmi ses courtisans. Et pourtant, Jeanne ne va pas vers l'homme qu'on lui indique, mais se dirige, elle, vers le roi, le vrai roi, et le reconnaît. C'est là l'un des premiers.
Second part to the scam, a magician's trick. The king says, she doesn't know who I actually am, and she picked me out of a crowd. Of course, she knew ahead of time. It's a magician's trick. So that's the second part of the scam.
Les miracles de Jeanne. Une fois qu'elle a identifié le roi, tous deux se mettent près de cette cheminée et Jeanne lui dit « Je me nomme Jeanne la Pucelle, je viens de la part de Messire Dieu te dire que tu es le vrai héritier. »
I came to the Lord to say you are the true heir of the French throne. That's the final, the third act. Tempting the king with what he wants to hear. So that's the third part of the scam. Make a big entrance, do a parlor trick, then give the sales pitch.
Héritier du trône de France, et je suis chargé de te conduire à ton sacre à Reims.
After his meeting with Joan, Charles, often described as taciturn and indecisive, is a changed man. According to every witness, he is radiant.
Well, it worked. Whoever was backing her, this captain, he turned the king's despair into hope. There you go.
Après quoi, le roi et Jeanne se mettent au bord d'une fenêtre, un petit peu à l'écart de la foule, où ils vont se parler. Jeanne lui révèle un secret, lequel personne ne le sait.
Nobody knows what the secret was. Of course, she doesn't want to be overheard. That way it can't be used against her in the future. Someone can't say, hey, that woman gave a bunch of bullshit to the king.
Personne ne le sait. À partir de la révélation de ce secret, c'est pour dire à quel point il est important, Jeanne aura droit à tous les égards du...
Joan was granted all the privileges of a royal princess. There you go. She outdid, Braveheart. Because here she showed up, gave a scam, and she was giving all these privileges. it worked. So that's what you're seeing. Part of the scam is that because people don't like men, that's why they love women who are virgins. You haven't been sullied by male sperm. That's part of the goddesshood. She's just a woman if a guy bangs her, but if she's not touched by us lowly males, she's a goddess. She's worthy of being worshipped, right?
Proof may be lacking, but one thing is certain. Yolande d'Anjou has supervised the most intimate and important of examinations, that of Joan's virginity, which ensures she has dedicated her body to God.
Why does God, who's all about spirituality, cares about our bodies so much?
It is thus Yolande d'Anjou who legitimizes Joan as a virgin.
It has to be, because again, it's to unify the forces of France against the British. That's what this is all about. She has to be a virgin because guys worship women who've never been touched by other guys. That's it.
Cette virginité est importante d'abord parce que Jeanne elle-même s'affirme plus elle, donc vierge. C'est sa définition. Parce que les prophètes sont en général vierges. Et les prophéties qui lui sont antérieures.
The prophetesses were generally virgins. They probably said they were. There were the straight women who probably slept around on the side, on the sly. And then there were the lesbians who didn't want it for a fact. And Joan of Arc was that one.
Parlait de l'arrivée d'une vierge. Donc pour coller, si vous voulez, au schéma prophétique dont elle s'est servie, il fallait absolument qu'elle soit vierge. Et puis ça correspond de sa part.
Hey, vital for a scam, but it was also a personal choice. She didn't like men.
Un choix personnel. On sait que Jeanne d'Arc
Joan of Arc didn't like to be touched by men. That's what she's leaving out.
n'aime pas qu'on la touche. On sait qu'elle a la hantise.
We know she was haunted by the fear of being raped. No, she was the fear of having sex with a man. Men grouse her out. She's a lesbian. That's what's going on there.
Du viol, qu'elle croit tout de suite que les...
She always thought men were ill-intentioned towards her. They wanted sex from her, is what she was worried about, right? And she's a lesbian. So she doesn't want men touching her. So what men lusting after her is ill intentions, right? So it shows you everything about this person, right? I mean, this is where you realize Joan of Arc is a lesbian, for sure.
And le bourgeois de Paris, a partisan of the Burgundian enemy, is merciless in his chronicle about the maid.
Elle se prétendait prophète et elle clamait « Telle chose adviendra pour vrai ». Tous les jours, elle chevauchait avec le roi, avec grande foison de gendarmes, sans aucune...
So she rode with the king himself, with any number of men-at-arms to protect her, but without women. Notice, guys, women are allowed to be in charge, but they're not allowed to be fodder, right? So back then, they were privileged just like they are now.
Femme, vêtue, chaussée, armée à la guise des hommes, un gros bâton dans sa main. Et quand un de ces gens se méprenait, elle l'en frappait à grands coups, à la manière d'une femme très cruelle.
So she carried a staff around, and if one of her male underlings made a mistake, she'd beat him long and hard, like the cruelest of women. Wow, that doesn't sound like now, does it? So a woman who is given a free ride like she is abuses her authority. What are the odds?
Thanks to the rehabilitation trial led by Cardinal Lestouville, the accounts he collected provide insight into Joan's private life during the military campaign.
Car toujours la nuit, elle avait
Every night she slept with a woman. Right, if she could find one.
une femme couchant avec elle si elle pouvait en trouver une. Et si elle ne pouvait pas en trouver, lors de la guerre ou en campagne, elle couchait tout habillée.
Yeah, she was so afraid the man might touch her, she slept closed she couldn't find a woman.
Jeanne couchait toujours avec des filles
Joan always slept with young women.
jeunes et ne voulait pas coucher avec des femmes
She would not sleep with aged women. So you can see it's not that she wants to protect her virginity. If that was the aspect, she wouldn't care about the age of the woman that was in her bed. No, she was a lesbian. She was turned on by beautiful young women. And that's how we know. Okay?
femmes âgées.
So this was a lesbian man-hater that was given a free ride by men in power. And then as soon as she got in there, she would abuse the men and underneath her and sleep with women. That was so different from today, right? Who do we know that was given a free ride by a man? And then once she got into a position of authority, she abused the men underneath her and surrounded herself with women. Things have really changed, right? This shows that Joan of Arc was treated very, very well by the king, and she was responsible for her own undoing. Okay? She got herself in trouble. You'll see what I mean.
The crowning of Charles VII is a triumph for Joan and her divine voices. She has fulfilled the second prophecy. She has turned the tide in a war that has lasted almost 100 years.
She fulfilled her roles, right? She united the forces of France. They kicked out Britain. They defeated. She's going to get rewarded, right?
But the king feels it is a time for pragmatism and opens truce negotiations with Burgundy, which Joan denounces.
This is where it is. The king is a politician. He knows what he's doing. He knows when to open up negotiations, right? He's a real diplomat. And she's getting in the way. She's going to foul it up for him. No point of him getting crowned for her to bug it up, right?
She prepares to besiege Paris.
Jusque-là, c'était l'année des merveilles. On croyait qu'elle allait faire des miracles. Elle n'avait connu que la victoire. Et puis, le 8 septembre, la ville de Paris a refusé de s'ouvrir. Les Parisiens étaient très compromis avec les Bourguignons. Ils avaient peur, s'ils ouvraient la porte au roi, de perdre leur place et d'un massacre général et d'un pillage. L'armée royale n'avait pas de matériel de siège.
Yeah, so the people there, they were under the thumb of Burgundy, right? And they didn't want to die. They were afraid that if they opened up the doors to her, there would be a massacre, right? So they weren't going to do that. So she opened a siege, and she didn't know that her army wasn't equipped for that. She lacked, know-how.
Donc, elle était très difficilement en mesure d'affronter un siège très long. Il y a eu un premier assaut qui n'a pas marché. D'autant qu'au premier assaut, le page de Jeanne avait été tué, Jeanne elle-même avait été blessée, l'étendard miraculeux était tombé à terre. Tout s'était déréglé.
On the 8th of September 1429, Joan for the first time meets with failure. She is wounded and her glory is tarnished. Charles dissolves the army. Perhaps to console her, he ennobles Joan and her family, giving her the name of Joan d'Ulysse.
Did they burn her at the stake? No. He rewarded her. even after she fucked up. Unlike William Wallace, soon as he screwed up, they threw him to the dogs. So this destroys this idea that this woman was betrayed.
But although deprived of most of her comrades in arms, she continues the fight, alone.
She doesn't win any victories when she is by herself.
That's right. She doesn't win any victories when she gets away from the men who know how to fight. Right.
She's also wounded on one or two occasions, perhaps more wounds than we might have expected. The wounds, though, are at a distance, always. I think they're by arrows.
Exactly. She was always being protected. This idea of her going in swinging sword at men didn't happen. She was just there as a centerpiece, as a rallying cry for the forces.
So I really wonder whether Joan was a warrior in the sense we would understand it for all of the other people present there, or whether she is very much a figurehead and really quite vulnerable. We know that Charles put a very big bodyguard around her, so I think we really need to revise the way we see Joan as a warrior.
I guess so, lady, we know it now. It's not a question of if it was that way. It was that way. She was a sham.
Her epic advance is finally halted at Compiègne in the spring of 1430. Jeanne is thrown from her horse and is taken prisoner. She is sold for £200 to John of Luxembourg, an ally of the English and Burgundians. Jean Germain, the Bishop of Nevers, tells how Joan was humiliated before the Duke of Burgundy.
Cette détestable femme, la risée des femmes, le scandale des hommes couvertes de ses armes à la manière des gens de guerre, est renversée de son cheval d'un coup de lance qui la frappe en pleine poitrine. Ses artifices disparaissent, ses sortilèges, ses
Her tricks undone, her spells faded. He called it here, because that's what she had. She was not a warrior nor a leader, or I should say, she wasn't what was it, a strategist. She was a leader in that people were willing to follow her, but she was disastrous.
Elle cherche à se dissimuler par la diversité de ses maintiens.
She tried to conceal herself amongst her consort. Well, all her bravery just dried up, didn't it?
Elle est reconnue, elle est prise, elle est amenée au prince.
What do the guys say? You know, women are brave until danger comes up, and then I'm just a girl.
Dépouillée de sa trompeuse armure, son sexe montre bien que c'est à tort qu'elle feint d'être un homme. Débarrassée de la pression de l'armure, ses seins retombent. Il montre qu'elle est apte aux soins de la maternité. Quoique, à sa tenue et à l'insolence de son langage, on eût pu la prendre pour un homme.
One could mistake her for a man. So this shows you how the average man has no idea what women are like. So she was mouthy like a man, right? But she isn't. She's mouthy like a woman, right? I mean, that's what the Karens are all about. They've shown that. Because these women, when they're feel their oats, when they feel that they're invulnerable, this is what they turn. Y'all can't hurt me. See? All you have to do is type in Karens into the search engine, and all kinds of women show up like this. So it was just that Joan here was one of the few women to actually be put in a place of authority where she could show her true colors. So this guy here had no idea what he was talking about in this regard. Anyway, I think I've shown what a scam artist she was. Excuse me. And how really she was just a catalyst to get the French forces together to fight the English. And it worked. But instead of enjoying all the fruits of her labor, she kept going and screwing it up for herself. Because she believed in her own hype. Anyway, we'll end it here.